So I think that we're talking about two different things. One is the external gaze that comes from without the work we're making, and one is what I feel as a woman. So this idea that because we have vaginas, we all make the same kind of film. When an indigenous woman, a woman of color, a trans woman, a 70-year-old woman, there's no comparison to the kind of life experience they have, or the kind of work that they would make. And if they were men, it wouldn't be considered. They wouldn't be lumped together in this way. So in my first film, it was the protagonists were two women, an older woman and a younger woman. And it's based on my own personal experience of my grandmother and myself. And then as soon as the film came out, it's kind of the same as happened with Rox in a certain sense, because it just became this dialogue about feminism when actually it was something very personal for me. And in my last film, Los Adioses, there was 150 people so on the crew, 50% women, and I had male colleagues ask me, how's the hysteria going? And, these are people that I know and I like and I respect, but they're, just this idea that somehow it's like a radical idea. I'm going off a bit by myself. To have like a female crew, and that it would somehow change the experience in a negative way, when actually it just made everything easier. It just made everything easier to have a majority, or at least 50% women. So anyway, I think it's two different conversations that we're having. One is about the external gaze towards our work, and one is about what we are doing as writers or directors when we're making work.
Yo me acordé de una anécdota también en mi primera película. También creo que es en la que más mujeres ha habido, de las 3 que he hecho como directora. Y en el scouting eran básicamente mujeres las cabezas de área, y el sonidista dijo, wow, vamos a pasar por un montón de reglas, ¿no? Pero con un dolor así como de wow. Y yo, por supuesto, no terminó la película, ¿no? O sea, es absurdo, ¿no? Pero son de esas anécdotas que ni me acordaba, ¿no? Pero son constantes, ¿no? Constantes. Cuando vas a festivales, cuando estás filmando, este tipo de comentarios, este tipo de ser mujer se vuelve un elemento complicado para los hombres. Y en términos, me quedé como ponías la pregunta, ¿cuál es la reticencia a usar la palabra feminismo? Y creo que Natalia lo describió muy bien. A mí así como odio que digan el cine de mujeres, y lo pongan también, es como que el cine de mujeres por tanto es cine feminista, ¿no? Y que hagas una película que viene de necesidades súper personales de hablar de algo, pero como eres mujer y como hablas de mujeres, entonces por tanto es cine feminista. No que esté en contra, sino que me parece que esas etiquetas están otra vez asociadas, están generadas desde fuera, ¿no? Yo no sé, o sea, este tipo de preguntas, por ejemplo, que te hacen los periodistas una y otra y otra y otra vez, y me imagino que todas lo habrán escuchado, preguntas de, bueno, ¿y qué tal ser mujer en el set? Yo nunca he oído que un hombre le pregunten eso, ¿no? Es como, porque es como seguir manteniendo algo, ¿no? Y normalmente no me gusta contestar esa pregunta, ¿no? Aunque hay mucho que decir al respecto, al hacer la pregunta estamos manteniendo algo y estamos manteniendo esa diferencia y estamos otra vez subrayando, ¿no? El cine de mujeres, el cine de las histéricas, ¿no? De las que arreglan, ¿no? O sea, es como, por eso no es reticencia a usar una palabra, sino es reticencia a no permitir que sigan etiquetando y que sigan metiendo en una caja el cine que hacemos, ¿no? Como compartidoras de vaginas, pues, como coincidencia.
I'm reminded of an anecdote on my first film. We were on a scouting, and it was mostly women on the scouting. And the sound guy, who was later fired for this, said, "Oof, we're going to have so many periods." Yeah. And it's just this constant barrage of comments about, somehow being a woman director, writer is somehow this really complicated idea for men. So she's talking a little bit about reticence or resistance, reluctance to really buy into this idea of women's cinema. You get so many when the cinema that at least that she makes comes from a very personal need to create work that has to do with her own reality, and you get these constant questions from journalists about what's it like being a woman on set, or having an all women set, or being a woman director or being a woman writer, and they would never ask a man that. And she thinks that by kind of responding to and accepting these questions, you keep reinforcing the idea that there is somehow a women's cinema, and that it is somehow different from other cinema, and that it is its own genre. Women's cinema, or the hysterical idea, or the periods, and just to not let these labels continue being created in discourse. Just because we share vaginas, it doesn't mean that we all speak the same language.
I really identify with everything that you've said. In fact, it's actually just listening to all of this, I find it's very upsetting, because it's just bringing back so much stuff that I've tried to just push under and chill out about and not get upset about. And it just reminds me again how distracting this whole conversation often is, and how exactly as you said, by answering that question we validate that this is a discussion we should be having. I mean, when our film premiered, Flatland, I lost count of how many. I mean, the kind of questions I received and the way the film was positioned was so different from if it had been a male filmmaker. In so many different ways. I mean, if I was to give examples, I would just speak for too long, so I'm not going to. But I think the only thing that I've been trying to get better at is to not answer those questions, and either just literally not answer them, or to say something completely different. And that's something I'm practicing at the moment, is to see those questions for what they are, and then not be polite, and not necessarily and not try and be diplomatic. And it's so hard for me to unlearn those things, because I've been told, I'm constantly being kind of reinforced. You're so lucky to be here. You're so lucky to have this platform. You should be so lucky that this person is asking you about your work and getting, but if someone asks me, well, tell us about, I got asked this a lot in Berlin, for example, tell us about Me Too and your film. And this is a film I've been working on for 10 years. And it was just bizarre to be asked, as if this is the only thing my film is about. Whereas if it was a male director, it would be, how did this happen? And let's talk about the artistry of and the creative choices that you made. And it's just bringing it all up again, and I'm just trying to calm down, because I get really upset about this, and I think for a while I've been telling myself it's not a problem, so it really is a problem, but wow, it's just so important not to get sidetracked. We've got films to make. That's much more important than having these conversations.
Identifico muchísimo con lo que hayan dicho, y la verdad es que me molesta, me pone muy, muy molesta. Son cosas que pasan tanto que la verdad es que intento no recordarlos, porque distrae mucho tener que meterte en esas conversaciones, en la idea de que en responder a esos tipos de preguntas, ¿no? del cine de mujer, das validación a esa idea y de esas preguntas. Y cuando salió Flatland, los tipos de preguntas que me hicieron, como la manera en que estaba posicionada la película era muy diferente de si lo hubiera hecho un hombre director. Y lo que estoy intentando hacer yo es no responder a esas preguntas ya, o simplemente no responder, o decir otra cosa por completamente. Ver las preguntas por lo que son, y no ser como buena onda y intentar, ¿no? O sea, ser la buena, porque me están diciendo todo el tiempo que qué suerte tengo de estar aquí, qué suerte que tengo esa plataforma para mi película, qué suerte que me están haciendo preguntas, ¿no? Y ya dejé de ser como polite en ese sentido y responder a las preguntas. En Berlín, por ejemplo, donde estrenó la película, me preguntaban, ay, ¿qué tal tu película y el movimiento de Me Too, de México es ya es hora? Y dije, he estado trabajando en esa película durante 10 años. O sea, a un hombre nunca le hubieran preguntado eso. lo hubieran preguntado por sus elecciones creativas o su arte. Entonces estoy intentando como calmarme porque me molesta mucho esta idea, esta conversación, y la realidad es que no podemos dejarnos distraer por esos discursos porque tenemos un trabajo importante que hacer y es hacer pelis.
I won't be long, but I think the same things apply to, I mean, in my experience, being a filmmaker who comes from the continent of Africa, a lot of we get the same thing. I mean, I'm sure you experience it in different ways as well, but the same thing on another level about Africa. So often, the film gets positioned as an African film, as if all African films are the same. And then, it's a film by an African woman, which is especially bizarre because, I mean, as you can see, I'm white. So it's just that I get asked a lot. So as an African woman, how do you feel about African women? Or as an African woman, what's it like to be an African woman? I mean, I'm not joking. I'm not making this stuff up. So yeah, it's not just about, I think these things apply in lots of other areas as well as just the gender discourse.
Solo para añadir una cosa, obviamente soy una directora de Sudáfrica, entonces también hay esa idea de que todas las películas que vienen de África son la misma película. Y todas las directoras africanas son la misma, que claramente yo soy blanca, no es el caso, y me hacen preguntas tipo, como mujer africana, ¿cómo sienten, o sea, qué piensas de las mujeres africanas, o cómo ves la posición de las mujeres africanas? Y, o sea, obviamente nada que ver, ¿no?
I'll be really quick because I agree with everything everybody said. I think we're all balancing our own intersectional womanhood. For me, as a black woman, I consider myself, in a strange way, I guess, black first. So I consider my blackness first, and I've completely stopped engaging in conversations about diversity, inclusion, and representation around being black because everybody knows the answer. I'm not a genius. I don't know any more than anybody else. The simple answer is just to hire more black people. And I find it bizarre that there are conferences and panels and people hired to investigate that when just employ people is the solution. And everybody knows that. So I feel like conversations about it are really weird, and I feel like it's a weird sort of voyeurism that you want me to talk about these things that you know the answer to. And listening to you guys talk, I'm sort of thinking about my womanhood in this industry and actually why there are so many spaces dedicated to talking about women, because surely the answer is then just hire more women. I think it's equally as uncomplicated. So I wonder then where we find the balance between creating these spaces that are safe for women to discuss and to find allies and camaraderie, but also using them responsibly and finding the balance between conversations about what it's like being an African woman, but also, what camera did you use and why? How did you develop this character? What was the process? How do we learn how to produce films with Indigenous directors? How do we learn how to pick a director or photographer, and why did you do that, and how was the editing process? How did you use first-time actors, and what was that experience like? And because there would never be 4 male filmmakers up here talking about their experience of being a male filmmaker. And I think there is a balance to be found between actually speaking to filmmakers as filmmakers and also speaking to women as women. And I think maybe the narrative changes when we start changing the narrative, and we start using these spaces that we create for ourselves as safe spaces, but also as spaces of professional, like enlightenment and, growth in that way. I don't know.